Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy Jonathan Macri with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. And today is a blast from the past because we're going to talk about someone who's near and dear to my heart. I know I've said that probably about half the players that we've talked about, but this one goes back to old teenage Macri. And we'll get into that in a moment. First, let me say hi to my buddy, Andrew Claudio. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, John. I'm excited to go back to the days of teenage Macri, although I'm curious how much winning the Knicks did during teenage Macri, which might inform our conversation about number 18 on the list today.
Yeah, well, they did a lot of winning. Unfortunately, not much of that winning is going to be relevant for this player today, which is how he ended up at number 18. But it is funny we're talking about teenage Macri. I swear I didn't intentionally bring it up for this reason, but I cleared out the last of my storage units in Brooklyn today. And in that storage unit was some old photo albums, to which my wife had just a delightful time flipping through after I brought them home. And they were filled with, you want to talk about teenage Macri, grade school Macri, a lot of oldies in there.
I need my good friend Dolores to understand the currency that she has in said photos and to utilize a platform known as Instagram to let the fine folks in the Knicks universe, the Knicks Film School universe, maybe have a gander at said photos in the not too distant future. Please and thank you.
What's something that every time some player does something, I post one photo on my Instagram from back in the day. I don't know, every time Josh Hart gets a triple double or something for next season, that'll be fun. We'll think of it.
Okay. So every time Josh Hart gets a triple double, you post a photo from a year that begins with a 19.
A year that begins with a 19. That's fine. Anyway, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about number 18 on the list today, John.
Let's get into it. So number 18 is Kurt Thomas. Kurt Thomas, and this is what you were like, what are you looking at before we started recording? What I was looking at is I was confirming that Kurt Thomas is indeed the oldest player that will appear on this list. He is the only player who is above 50 years of age. Stephon Marbury is getting close, but I just looked it up. He's 48 and change. Kurt Thomas is 52. And that makes sense because he went to college for several years. He went to TCU, was, I believe, the leading scorer in the country. Yes, of course. It's right here. Attended TCU, drafted 10th overall by the Miami Heat. And he made his debut in the NBA with Miami way back in 1995. So I just realized, was he Pat Riley's first draft pick as Heat president?
Ooh, maybe.
That would check out.
Yeah, that would check out because he had gone to that summer or that off season is when he went to. So yes, he was Pat Riley's first draft pick.
How about that? Look at that. Things we find out live on the pod. Signed with the Knicks in 1999, what was supposed to be the 98-99 season, but of course lockout happened, only 50 games. He was traded on draft night in 2005. And then returned in 2012 as part of the Raymond Felton trade, which sent Raymond Felton back to the Knicks after he was also traded away. Played for 8 other NBA teams. He is second in total rebounds, total blocks, and total steals during the relevant portion that we are talking about here since the 2000-2001 season. 8th in total points since the 2000-2001 season. And can I add a couple of more little ones here that you've seen?
I was going to ask you to name the 8 other teams he's played for, but by all means, add to the resume.
Oh my God. The 8 other teams he's played for. I was literally just looking at his basketball reference page. You'd think that would have helped me here. Well, Miami, we named one already. Dallas, Phoenix, Chicago. I'm probably out already. What are the other ones? I'm not going to guess the other ones.
San Antonio, Milwaukee, Portland, and Seattle.
I was going to say Seattle, and I didn't trust myself. Okay.
Yeah.
A couple other numbers that are not represented here. One is 400.
You could just say a couple more lines to his resume because I only have 5 lines here. So you could just not say I forgot stuff and just say we have more room for stuff.
You didn't forget anything. I just find it interesting what you
not represented here by Mr. Claudio, who hates math apparently. Go ahead, talk about Kurt Thomas.
Well, no, it's two numbers to me that stand out and that deserve to be mentioned. One is 439, and that is the number of games that Kurt Thomas played from the start of the 2000-2001 season until this present time. That is the most games of any player that is eligible for this list. Second on that list is Karl-Anthony at 412. Third on that list is David Lee at 368th. And you could have knocked me over with a feather. I would not have thought. I know how many seasons he's been here, but I wouldn't have thought that the fourth name on this list is Mitchell Robinson at 337. And then there's some more familiar names: Julius Randle, Nate Robinson, Allen Houston. So Kurt Thomas, a lot of games, which, as we're getting into our discussion about him and where he belongs on this list, because I know I'm going to be in the minority on where I feel he belongs. One might look at that as a demerit because, you said some stats: second in rebound, second in block, second in steal. Someone might hear those stats and be like, well, of course he's second in all those categories. He was here forever. Others might say, you know what? He deserves credit for that amount of time accrued. We'll get into that. And the other number, and I want to I'm going to leave it open to you. I just want your opinion on, should this mean everything? Should this mean something? Should this mean nothing? Win shares in the relevant time period. 4th. Now, I will say this is a big man skewing stat, and Kurt Thomas, for as much as he maybe didn't play as much center as he would play in the NBA today, was a big man. 4th in win shares, behind Karl-Anthony, who had 43.6, David Lee, who had 36.3. There's that name again, Mitchell Robinson, 35.2, and then Kurt Thomas at 31.3. And then number 5, he'll be first on this list, I would imagine, within, a year or two, Jalen Brunson at 28.2. The reason I want to go there is because I think there is a perception that Kurt Thomas was here at the tail end of the glory years and then stuck around for the beginning of the bad years. And that is true to some extent. But I never viewed him, and I'm a little older than you, as a losing player. And I viewed him as like the last vestiges of what once was great, and that things started to go south while he was still here. I do not put that on him. And I'd like to think the win shares is a little, like, it backs me up ever so slightly. So I will turn it to you.
So, as you know, John, they don't have a stat called loss shares. So there's no way for us to invent
that.
Please, somebody get with us. Ben Kim Garvey, you've been trying to, I think you successfully made the Clyde defense stat. Let's now work on a loss share stat so we can now use that and have it back up our arguments when necessary. We had this conversation with Hartenstein a little bit, that Hartenstein's 16th in total win shares over the course of the past 25 seasons. So there's an advanced stat case if you want to make it for Hartenstein that he managed to be 16th in 2 years, whereas Kurt Thomas didn't accrue that many over the course of the most games played in a Knicks uniform over the course of this list. That someone in Jalen Brunson, who's played almost half as many games as Kurt Thomas, will probably eclipse him in the not too distant future. What we should do next, John,
sure,
is go to the actual rankings and understand the discrepancy that we're talking about. So yeah. I had him 18th, and you cut that in half, and you have easily the highest on the Kurt Thomas ranking, and it's Jonathan Macri as 9th is where you had Kurt Thomas. And I got to be honest, when we started this venture, there's episodes I'm looking forward to, but more specifically arguments that I'm looking forward to. And I don't have an argument. I respect Kurt Thomas. I don't think he's a losing player either. I am looking forward to hearing your argument that he's the 9th most important, greatest, top Knick of the past 25 seasons, though.
So, a couple things. If you prefer, so as to not be so dependent on how long he was here, for your case, Kurt Thomas win shares per 48 minutes over the relevant portion of time we're talking about is 53rd out of I don't know how many eligible players, over 200 eligible players. Not a perfect stat. You want to know who is number one over the last 25 years in win shares per 48 minutes? I played for the Knicks. Yeah, I could give you 200 guesses. You wouldn't get it.
Who?
Jimmer Fredette. You want to guess who's second?
Who?
Thanasis Antetokounmpo. Now,
so we should put a minutes played thing.
Okay,
our cap on this.
If we're doing a minutes played minimum, number 1 is Mitchell Robinson. Number 2 is Tyson Chandler. Number 3 is Jalen Brunson. Number 4 is Marcus Camby. Number 5, Enes Kanter. He'll always be Enes Kanter to me. And number 6, Isaiah Hartenstein. As I said, it is a big man skewing stat. That said, Kurt Thomas's win shares per 48 minutes, 0.113. Just ahead of OG Anunoby, 0.112, and Julius Randle, among others, 0.105. So I'd like to think Kurt Thomas had his fair share of an impact on winning. Why is he number 9 for me? I'm going to say one big reason, and that is that along with Allen Houston, Kurt Thomas and Allen Houston are the only 2 players who were here during the late 90s. And again, our list starts with the 2000-2001 season when the Knicks were still pretty good. They won 48 games. They had home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs, albeit they lost that series in 5 games. Tough 5-game series loss to the Raptors. But then there was a period of the 2001-02 season, 02-03, and then you get to 03-04. So there was only a 2-year gap in which they did not make the playoffs. And during that 2-year gap, the team was not good. They were not the laughingstock that they became both in the Isaiah Thomas years and then in the Phil Jackson years, for whatever that's worth. And then they made it back to the playoffs with Stephon Marbury leading the way, like Isaiah's kind of first year. He took over that team in December. And Kurt Thomas was not only still here during that season, but he was still playing a really important role. So just for the 2003-2004 season, 80 games, 75 starts, 32 minutes a game. He was 11-8. He was really good. And then he stayed one more season after that when the wheels started to fall off. He was good again. And then he went on his merry way. And then came back for the 2012-13 season, which I know is a season that is near and dear to your heart. Listen, was he a huge player on that team? No, he averaged 2.5 points a game. But he started 17 games and he played at 39. So I think the sum total of his resume to me, which was when at the start of our relevant time period, he was a massive part of a pretty good to like borderline really good team. Stuck around for a little while when they were kind of a good team again, and then was around in a somewhat impactful way at the, in 2012-13 when they were good again. I think he deserves credit for like being the only guy he represents essentially 3 distinct eras on this list. And for me, the 439 games is not a demerit. It is a positive because Kurt Thomas, and never once did I watch Kurt Thomas step foot on the basketball court and feel like, this guy's not helping matters. Was he good enough by himself, obviously, to make the team good? Of course not. He wasn't that sort of player. He was a role player. But he never made things worse. And for me, I just could not, in good conscience, take the guy who played the most games during this time period and say, nope, he's not one of the 10 best because he was here for some crappy teams and he didn't do, he wasn't part of some higher profile winning teams. which I feel like is getting held against a lot of guys from some different eras. Justifiably in some cases, I don't think it's justifiable in Kurt Thomas's case.
It's well said. I think it's a proper tribute to a guy that I would agree with you was one of the only players that you knew if this team wanted to be good, he'd someone they would stick around, that they would want to keep, that a competent front office will eventually get him and add him to their rotation. It's funny. I had him higher when we were including 2000, like when I initially did this exercise, and I was including a guy that helped them get to the conference finals back in 2000. But when I just have the 01 season personally, and it's like he was like the fifth or sixth best player on a team that lost in the first round, and then the 9th or 10th guy on a team that eventually won 54 games. Yep. And when we get to lasting image, it's weird that that's probably where I'm going to go for this stretch of Kurt Thomas. That there's a moment in that season that will forever be my lasting image and event during a season in which he got released because the Knicks signed Kenyon Martin to do a better impression of Kurt Thomas. I remember the 03 or the 04 season, whichever one it was, where the center depth in the Eastern Conference was not the greatest. It was clear Jermaine O'Neal was going to start it. And there was a conversation, like start the All-Star game, I should say. And there was a conversation about who's the backup center in the Eastern Conference. And Ben Wallace obviously ended up getting it. But there was a conversation around, like, the Knicks are like 5 or 6 games under 500, and Kurt Thomas is kind of the only player that matters on that team, and he's doing all the dirty work. Think Joakim Noah, but without the passing. And look, it's a very old phrase, and this is probably the oldest episode we're going to do for the oldest player, but the lunch pail attitude and game of Kurt Thomas that you knew you had to box him out. You knew you were in for a physical matchup when you faced him, and when there wasn't many things to be proud of as a Knicks fan over the last 4 or 5 seasons of his Knicks tenure, you at least could be proud of him. So while I don't have the same adoration that you do, no, he is not a top 10 Knick in my mind over the past 25 seasons. I'm glad we have you to remind us youngins what it was like back in your day, John, when we could appreciate Kurt Thomas.
I think I just did the math correct. He started, again, I said the 439 total games. He started 364 of those 439. So, like, again, I think there is he deserves credit for, again, was he ever the best player on any of the teams he was on ever? Forget just the relevant time period we're talking about. Any Knicks teams he was on. No, he was never the best guy. But, like, like how over the last few years, there have been times where we've had, like, Isaiah Hartenstein, to give an example of someone we just finished talking about, where there were times like, man, is Isaiah Hartenstein like the team's second most important player or third most important player? Like, you could have those conversations about Kurt Thomas because all of the little things that Kurt Thomas did that didn't necessarily come through on a box score, but that if you watch the games, you knew that the team, like, relied on him so heavily. And, like, look, again, he was just to be very clear, and I'm not trying to blow smoke up anyone's ass and trying to, sell anybody on anything that isn't, accurate. He was part of some bad teams. I'm looking at the records right now. So 2001-02, 30 and 52. 2002, 2003, 37 and 45. And then 2004, 2005, 33 and 49. Is it a complete coincidence that the first year after he left, they fell 10 wins to 23 and 59 in what at that point was, like, unthinkably horrific, to say nothing of some of the other seasons that followed later on in Knicks history before we got to the current era? I don't know. Look, I could sit here and wax poetic about Kurt Thomas for a long time. I'll save everybody the trouble. Just for anybody who didn't watch this guy, you would have loved him. Like if you're a Knicks fan, if you're a New Yorker, if you think the Knicks that a good Knicks team should espouse certain qualities, Kurt Thomas was your guy, And like you said, lunch pail wasn't always pretty, but you always respected what he brought to the table. Quick break to tell you about America's first ever USDA organic THC gummy. You know the words. Shout out to Cornbread. Yes, Cornbread, the source of your healthy, happy hour. It's a natural and healthier way to experience a carefree moment. Cornbread's THC gummies offer a balanced sense of happiness and relaxation. Well, how do they achieve that balance? My favorite thing about Cornbread is it's just the right amount for me as someone who is not a regular user of these sorts of products, but still wants to get that relaxation without feeling anxious or paranoid like some other cannabis edibles, which is why Cornbread's 1-to-1 THC to CBD ratio is perfect for me. They have 10 milligrams of THC per gummy, which is just the right dose, and it gives me everything I need without any of the stuff that I don't want. If you are looking for a healthier way to enjoy a carefree moment, you have to give Cornbread Hemp a try. They have created the first ever USDA organic THC gummy that is 100% legal. As a special offer to Knicks Film School listeners, you can get 30% off your first order. Just visit cornbreadhemp.com/KFS and use promo code KFS at checkout. Again, that's cornbreadhemp.com/KFS and use code KFS for 30% off your first order. Cheers to a healthier happy hour. You teased it before. What is your lasting Kurt Thomas memory?
So we're going to move on to our next segment, our first segment, for those just tuning into the Kurt Thomas pod. For whatever reason, you chose this to be your first pod to tune into.
A fine choice.
Yes. My best memory lasting image is the Bone Spurs game against Utah.
It's a great one.
Yeah. So for those who don't know,
that was his high scoring game of that year.
I don't even know if he scored 6 points. I don't even know if he was actually.
No, it wasn't that, because he had a game where he scored in double digits. I'll check where it ranked though.
So the Knicks in 12-13, that season they won 54 games and finished with a 2 seed. Melo finished third in MVP, right?
Most minutes he played.
So he didn't play close to 30 before that though.
No, he played almost 27 minutes against Utah. A few days before that.
It's the Clippers and then another West team before Portland before that. Those 3 games where his minutes went up.
Man, your recollection is insane. The day before against the Clippers in LA, he played 16 minutes and change, and 2 days before that in Portland, he played 24 minutes. So it was up, then down a little bit, then the highest against Utah.
So if anybody wants to go do their homework and just we're dorks when we, as basketball fans, just go through like a basketball reference deep dive and go through the game logs of Kurt Thomas's 2012-2013 season. He was in the rotation at the start, played a bunch at the beginning of the year on opening night, the Hurricane Sandy game that got moved, that eventually the Knicks ended up playing the Miami Heat, winning by 20. Kurt Thomas played how many, John? Like 14, 15?
In the Miami
opening night against Miami.
He played 16 minutes.
So 16 minutes. He was in the rotation as the backup 4. And then his minutes got sporadic throughout the season. Father Time had started to show up. It was very clear this is going to be his last season, I should say, too.
Oh, yeah.
The Knicks also dealt with some injuries throughout the year. Melo didn't play all 82 games. Tyson Chandler didn't play all 82 games. And there was a West Coast trip where it looked like at the end of it, the Knicks were probably going to fall out of the 2 seed, which they were for most of the season, and fall behind either Brooklyn or Indiana or both. And we'll be looking at a team struggling to keep the 4 seed. There's also, shout out Tom Thibodeau, there was a 5 seed Chicago Bulls team playing without Derrick Rose that was inching their way toward like being a frisky 5 or 4 seed that the Knicks may have ended up playing. And they had just lost in Portland and just lost in Los Angeles against the Clippers. And they were ending their road trip against the Utah Jazz, and Kurt Thomas, Bone Spurs and all, played outstanding defense. And like, it's one of those, you had to be there to watch it and stay up late to watch this game because it was a heroic effort. No Melo, no Tyson Chandler. he's the back. Kenyon Martin had just been signed to the team, and it was like, okay, we have the best roster possible in 2003 for this game in 2013. And he left it all out on the court. It's the last game he ever played in the NBA. And the Knicks ended up taking that win, avoiding a 5th straight loss during this road trip, and winning 14 consecutive games nearly to close out the season. I'm not going to say it inspired the winning streak. Melo and Tyson Chandler, their 2 All-Stars coming back, probably had something to do with it. But a season that looked like it was trending toward, this is going to be a team that was fun for 3 months, and then this is going to end up being a 6 seed. Ends up being a 2 seed, and it started with Kurt Thomas's last memory and last moment in the NBA. So I have to go to that.
It's a phenomenal pick. It was where I thought you were going to go. He had he was 40 by that point, because that was his age 40 season. He had turned 40 in October. So 40-year-old Kurt Thomas on Bone Spurs. Doing that was pretty cool. My last thing, this is memory or image. I'm going to go with image. It's just the eyes. I'll keep it very simple. I will point out, though, again, in what has become, just a completely forgotten playoff series, as it should be in Knicks history, the 2004 sweep at the hands of the Nets. Kurt Thomas started that series off in a game I attended horribly. He was 1 for 10 from the field, and the Knicks ended up getting smoked by 24 points. Then they kind of got blown out in game 2, and then game 3 and game 4 were actually pretty close. Over the last 3 games of that series, Kurt Thomas, game 2, 18 and 12 and 36 and 37 minutes. Game 3, 15 and 12 and 38 minutes. And then in nearly 40 minutes of action, the game 4 loss, 14 and 15. Again, that team wasn't very good. They made the playoffs as 7th seed. They still weren't very good. But Kurt Thomas could still bring it in a significant way, even then. Okay.
By the way, that team was a 6 seed.
I thought there were 7. There were 6?
So that was a very weird season in that there was 3 very good teams that were championship contenders. The Pacers,
Detroit, Indiana, and New Jersey.
The Pacers, the Pistons, the Pacers, Pistons, Nets.
Yeah.
The reason they ended up playing the Nets was because they were the 3 seed.
I thought that they were
so
7.
Think about, if you could, I don't know if you can remember the 2004 playoffs. I know we all know it ends with the Pistons winning the title.
Yeah.
But basically from 3 on was all garbage.
Lesser teams, yes.
Right. So the 3 seeded, you know what? You might be right that there were 7. Now that I'm thinking about it.
I'm looking at it.
So
I'm right. Holy shit. I'm right over you. Wow. I'm never right.
Well done with the recollection. So here's where I went. I forgot that back then they just did the 2 division winners got the 1 and 2 seed. And if the 3 seed had a better record, they just got home court, even if they were playing the 2 seed in the second round.
Well, great job recalling that, because the Pistons, the second best team. Well, let's start. Pacers 61 wins, Pistons 54 wins, Nets 47 wins. But yes, division mattered back then. And then the Knicks were finished 39 and 43. So they were the first under 500 team to make the playoffs. Do you happen to remember the other under 500 team to make the playoffs?
The Boston Celtics were the 8th seed. So that's Dwayne Wade's rookie year. They finished 4. They play Chicago, losing they win in the first round, advance, and then they trade for Shaq the following offseason. I'm blanking on who the 6th seed was.
The 6th-seeded team was the New Orleans Hornets.
Yeah,
no, sorry. Wait, hold on. The Hornets played the Heat. The Bucks were the 6th seed.
So that wasn't the Bulls that lost to the Miami Heat in the first round?
Man, you're getting old. No, I'm looking at it right now. The Hornets lost in 7 games against the Heat. And if I recall correctly, that Hornets Heat series was a matchup where there were some players who were previously on the other team. Hold on. I'm going to look at it right now.
I know nothing, Jon Snow. I officially don't know anything about the NBA playoffs.
Hold on. Eddie Jones. Eddie Jones at this point in time was on the Miami Heat and had previously spent 2 seasons, or a season and a half, I should say, on the Charlotte Hornets. And on the Hornets roster was it PJ Brown who was the guy, or was it Steve Smith? Steve Smith had been a member of the Heat. I know that. And PJ Brown also. Both of those guys had been members of the Heat. They were now on the Hornets.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember nothing about this season other than I shouldn't say nothing. I don't remember those intricate details. I did remember the Knicks were like one of the post top 3 that were they're going to be one of those honorary teams that makes the playoffs, even though they don't have an over 500 record.
I want to. Was Steve Smith traded for Eddie Jones? No. Oh no, he signed as a free agent. He was traded. Oh no, he was traded for Jim Jackson. All these guys, all these late.
Yeah, guys, like, if you're of a certain age, we're tickling some type of itch or scratching some type of itch for you right now. That we're naming all these guys from the mid 2000s. But it's
a certain type of player: Eddie Jones, Steve Smith, Jim Jackson. They were all like wings who were like not quite. They were like Jamal Mashburn, also a member of the Heat and the Hornets, I think, at one point in time. Like, they're all like these like wings who would have been really good in the NBA today. And they were good back then. But anyway, how do we start talking about this? Oh, yeah, because it's a Kurt Thomas episode.
Because it's a Kurt Thomas episode. We have to talk about his peers to show some relevancy. What I'm trying to say about that forgetful sweep, during that season is that it was very clear from the beginning of the year that like there were 6 teams. I just looked it up. There were 6 teams that won 50 games in the Western Conference. The right. West East imbalance. This was really toward the beginning of, and it really hasn't changed since.
No, but everything old is new again, because look at this year in the East. 2 teams that really matter. Well, then it was 3 teams that really matter, but the Nets only won 47 games.
The only reason the Nets were the 2 seed is because of what I was talking about. They were a team during a time when there was only 4 divisions and winning your division was an automatic 2 seed. And then they added the Bobcats years later.
Yes.
And that gave us a 30th team, and Stearns just decided we'll do 15 and 15 and have 3 divisions. And for a while, like the first time, the first season of the 6th division NBA, 1, 2, and 3 got automatic, like there were your division winners. So you could have like a 44 win 3 seed, but a 60 win 4 seed. Shout out to the Mavericks playing the Spurs in the second round when they were both high 50 wins teams, the year that Dirk made it to the finals. And then Adam Silver came along and said, we're just going to like rank them in order of record. I say all this because I don't remember anything from that Nets sweep other than Kurt Thomas getting a lot of rebounds. I believe the last 3 games of that series were all double doubles. It's a very forgotten playoff series in Knicks history, to be honest, because it's a blip during a very forgetful time in Knicks history.
Nobody thinks about it anymore. Okay. Transition to a category. I don't have much for this one. Biggest regret or something you wish could have gone differently or better, even if it was out of the player's control. I mean, the easy answer is I wish the Knicks didn't suck for a few years.
Bingo. That's all I got. I wish the Knicks were better. I regret that Kurt Thomas spent the majority of his career of a lengthy NBA career, but where he played for 9 different teams, and the team he played the most for was largely bad.
Yeah, I mean, I got one. It has nothing to do with the Knicks, but I wish Kurt could have gotten a championship somewhere. You know, I mean, I'm trying to think. He was in the 2 Eastern Conference Finals, obviously with the Knicks. He was no. He was on. Oh, you're saying the not 2000. Yeah. Not our. I'm saying his whole career. He was also in the Eastern Conference Finals with the Bulls in the 2010-11 season for our buddy Tom Thibodeau. They obviously got beaten by Miami in 5 games, and then he made 2 Western Conference Finals. You're going to have better recollection about this stuff than I am. the 2005-2006 season with Phoenix. I'm trying to remember which Phoenix team. Was that the first Nash?
No, it's the second one. It's the year that they lost to Dallas,
to the Mavs.
Okay. How often did he play in that series? Because that's the year Amari got hurt.
So in the 2006 Western Conference Finals, Kurt Thomas hardly played. He played 6 minutes in the
So he was just on the roster for them. But that's D'Antoni. He was, that's the first guy to institute a stretch four. And when Kurt Thomas is not a stretch four, he was never going to go to him. And then in the 2008 playoffs, he was with the Spurs, and they lost in 5 games to the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. So never really came that close, unfortunately. But he's the sort of guy that it would have been cool for him to get a championship. And he got to the Spurs a year late.
I know.
Yeah.
Man. Next up, after biggest regret, is what role would they have on the current team? Okay, peak Kurt Thomas during the relevant portion of time that we're talking about was probably not in 2001. It was probably more towards 2004.
Yeah, when he was starting. The problem is, I think the role he had in 2000, the role he had in 99-2000, it wouldn't be the role he had on this team. He wouldn't be a backup 4 on this team. He'd be a backup 5 in today's
game. Look, we just recorded a whole episode about Isaiah Hartenstein and what would be different if he stayed, and what role would he have on the current team, and would he be closing games, and pick your ideal Knicks 5-man lineup. Look, Kurt Thomas wasn't as big as Isaiah Hartenstein. He did not. It was not the passer that certainly not the passer that Isaiah Hartenstein was. I want to be
where are you going with this?
He was. I'm going to talk about this with a special guest in a few minutes, but I think Kurt Thomas would be a dynamite small ball 5.
Right, I'm saying a backup 5. Yeah,
and I bet you he'd make some beautiful music, setting bone crushing screen after bone crushing screen for Jalen Brunson.
So I don't disagree as a backup. He'd be a backup 5 is the short answer to this. I'm trying not to be disrespectful and saying the name Precious Achiuwa because I think he's way better than Precious Achiuwa.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
The theoretical version of Precious Achiuwa that has a coach that doesn't want him to play next to a 4 or that can't shoot or want him to take corner threes every now and then, right? Kurt Thomas is way better than that, but the theoretical role for Precious. Oh, so here's the thing I should say. The best case scenario Precious Achiuwa is Kurt Thomas, in my opinion.
Andrew?
What?
Doctor Strange said, what was it, 14 million some odd, whatever? And there was one?
There's one?
There's not even that one outcome where...
You see what I'm saying, though? A center that's undersized and can't shoot in today's NBA doesn't have much of a place.
Well...
So... He's a backup 5 that sets screens for 14 minutes.
Can't shoot. Look, he didn't extend to 3. Kurt Thomas was a mid-range assassin.
And what happens with mid-range shots in today's NBA?
If you're a center who teams have to guard out past the restricted area, you can open up the offense in different ways if you're playing with 4 shooters. Look, we're going to go round and round in circles. I'm just saying, I think Kurt Thomas... prime Kurt Thomas could very easily get 20 plus minutes on, and maybe that's underselling it
on a good team
on this Knicks team.
I don't. I think Mike Brown's committed to pace and space. He also wasn't the fastest. He played during an era where you walk the ball up the court. I think he's a backup. He's a small. You're right about a small ball 5. He'd have to play with 4 shooters. He can't play with Josh Hart.
He can play with Cat.
Yeah,
say that right now.
But again, the whole theoretical version of, you know what? Could he be the perfect Mitch replacement if Mitch were out is where I'm going to go with this. The problem is that if Mitch is out, I'd rather them go 5 out and not waste. We just saw the experiment of Cat next to a non-rim protector for a year. I'd rather hit so maybe that's why, again, this goes to the Precious thing. Like if you're playing a non-shooter theoretical center next to Cat, then like Kurt Thomas is the 100th percentile to Precious Achiuwa's 30th percentile.
Again, Precious Achiuwa gave us some nice moments.
No, he didn't.
He gave. Hey, look, I'll always remember Game 4 against Philly. So he did give us some nice moments.
Okay, so he gave us a moment. You're right.
He cannot sniff the sweat dripping off of Kurt Thomas.
He would have played every game on a bad Knicks team. I'll tell you that much. Which is what Kurt Thomas did for 4 seasons.
A lot of Knicks played a lot of games on a lot of bad Knicks teams over the years. Okay, let's move on.
I'm trying to play out the exercise. Not before we move on. I just don't think he's that. My take for this question was going to be, I don't know what role he has in the current NBA.
This discussion and the fact that I'm pushing back, and I genuinely believe Kurt Thomas at his peak would get 20 to 25 minutes on this Knicks team. That is why he is number 9 on my personal list, because I just truly believe he would.
My thought that in today's NBA, an undersized center, a proper sized small power forward that can't shoot just doesn't have much of a place in today's NBA. I'm trying to be as generous as possible. That backup center is the role, but that's why he's 18th for me. You know,
it would be tricky playing him with Mitch. I'm not disagreeing with you there.
Or Josh Hart.
We could get into it again. Did Kurt Thomas space it to 3? No. I don't think you need to have a center in particular who has to space it to 3, to play hard. You want to talk about 2 players who would have made beautiful music together? 2 unselfish, smart players, Josh Hart and Kurt Thomas. Well, I'd give my fucking left nut, which I don't need anymore, to see those guys play on the same team.
I would rather see the space that doesn't make our best players operate in a phone booth, which is why I'm glad we've moved on past certain parts of the Knicks tenures that have happened. So.
Kurt Thomas, Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, 2 shooters. Book the Canyon of Heroes tomorrow.
Yep, and so they're sagging off of Kurt Thomas and Josh Hart. So now there's rim protection. We're doing. It's so disrespectful to bring up Precious Achiuwa. We're talking about Kurt Thomas. We're literally having the same conversation that we did during the season when teams were just not guarding two non-shooters.
Precious Achiuwa cannot be mentioned in the same sentence.
But that's where I'm trying to entertain the reality of Kurt Thomas in today's NBA. Like, does he develop a shot? Like his mid-range becomes a 3-point shot. Like that's what you have to do. There's no peak Kurt Thomas that is as is. That has, I think, a prominent place in today's NBA other than backup center. He comes in for Mitch, makes sure Mitch doesn't have to play 100 minutes.
We're gonna agree to disagree here. I will just say briefly before we move on. This is a man who averaged 29 points a game at TCU his senior season, led the country in scoring.
Johnny, obviously, 1995. Did they have a 3-point line back then? I know I'm joking, but come on. They took 4 threes a month.
Different sport. Never averaged half that much. Literally, never averaged half that much in the pros. It wasn't because he was not a incredibly skilled offensive player. He just did what his teams needed him to do, and he never complained about it. And that's why Kurt Thomas would fit in almost any lineup that you put him in today.
I didn't say that he wouldn't he would be the unselfish lunch pail workman guy that as a backup 5 could do all the dirty work that coaches love. I agree with that. I'm saying we already have 2 non-shooters in our rotation. And
25 minutes.
Want to know what and you're probably losing 35 games a season, maybe 40. John, you know what me and Kurt Thomas have in common?
What?
We're tied for 3-pointers made in the NBA.
That's a good one. That's good.
Lasting legacy.
That's good. All right. Lasting legacy with Knicks fans. I mean, I've said it already. He's just, is everything I've said on this episode completely logical? Probably not. That's because I can't talk about Kurt Thomas with like total logic. He is, I mean, I was an older teenager, but like, I mean, I'll never forget watching that dude and being like, man, I'm so lucky to get to root for this guy. And this team, it wasn't just him. I mean, it was all those guys. Like, but I don't get to have. Well, I guess I could have had a few more of them on this list if I really wanted to. It would have been disingenuous to put some of the holdovers on this team because they were just not here for long enough and whatever. I could get away with putting Kurt Thomas where I put him. I'm the only one apparently who felt they could get away with putting him.
Well, top 10, yeah, but. To the point of an old soul, and this will transition well to the guest we're bringing on in just a second, but he does scratch the itch of an older Knicks fan, which, I mean, look, just to put the rankings back up again, DJ has him 11th. I'll remove the thing. DJ does have him 11th. So there's someone else that's around your age that also has an appreciation for that. We're going to bring Ray Marcano on here to talk and more wax poetic about Kurt Thomas. Sean with a W apparently just was born too late because he has him ranked 29th and
no respect.
Yeah. There's another player he has ranked much lower that we'll talk about in the not too distant future. Yeah. But listen, last conversation notwithstanding, there was a moment, and there were moments during the dark ages of the 2000s for the Knicks where you were like, damn, at least I got like Kurt Thomas working his butt off on this team that's not going to win more than 30 or something games. You know, there were very few players like that you had pride in wearing your favorite team's uniform. And, I'm glad that he found his way to be represented on this list. I had him on my top 25 and he ended up where he was thanks to you, John. So thank you for letting us wait till 18 to have the Kurt Thomas conversation.
My pleasure. Thanks, Andrew, and everybody. Now stick around for my conversation with the great Ray Marcano. Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast, he is, of course, a friend of the pod, a friend of the Knicks Film School newsletter, where his Friday columns are currently running, as they have run for, I think it's the 4th or 5th summer he's been writing Friday columns for me during the summertime for the KFS newsletter. They just keep getting better. Of course, you could find his writing elsewhere, including the Bourbon Resource, a monthly newsletter on Substack, which is absolutely the best resource for bourbon critique, bourbon, everything bourbon, all things bourbon that you could find anywhere. His journalistic endeavors and exploits and accolades, the list it's miles long. So I'm gonna stop blowing smoke up his ass, and I'm just gonna say hi to my buddy Ray Marcano. Hello, sir.
I think we can just end it now because I don't think that I could add anything else to any of that. How you doing, man? You all right? You all right? You good?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I don't think we've talked like on the phone or on, via video in a few months because I was away. I moved. I've been getting settled in. You've had your own stuff going on, but tonight we're just a couple of old Knicks fans. Emphasis on fans.
Old. Thank you, John. I appreciate that.
And we're here to talk about someone that is, I think, near and dear to our heart. So we're here to talk about Kurt Thomas. So Kurt, I asked, I had told you about the 25 for 25 project, and you said, hey, if you need me to hop on a pod, and I said, well, is there any Nick over the last, as Madison's clearly excited about Kurt Thomas, is there any Nick from the last 25 years that resonates, deeply with you, or that you feel like you're maybe lower on consensus on or higher on consensus on? And you said Kurt Thomas, and I said, great, because without giving too much away, although I guess we will have kind of talked about this in the episode a little bit, to say that I was higher on Kurt Thomas than my Knicks Film School brethren would be a bit of an understatement. I don't know if I don't want to reveal who it was, but there is someone, multiple someones actually, who did not have Kurt Thomas in their top 25. I had him in my top 10, and there were several reasons for that. Kurt Thomas obviously is someone who played more games for the Knicks during this relevant time period than anyone else. But for me, and I'll kick it over to you after I say this, he just embodies a style, a ethos, a mentality that has gone the way of the dinosaur. And I'm happy we get to talk about him for a little bit. So what are your recollections of Mr. Thomas?
Well, yeah, I think he's vastly underrated in New York history, New York Knicks history. He's, let's take a look at when he came to the Knicks. He played his first 3 years in Phoenix. The Knicks signed him as a free agent, and they signed him in a free agent because they thought they needed toughness. They had just traded Charles Oakley to Toronto.
Miami, by the way, first 3 seasons, first 2 in Miami, then Dallas. They traded him to Phoenix. I get that confused too.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So, so Phoenix was in there somewhere. Yeah, but anyway, they needed toughness, and they knew they needed toughness because they traded Oakley to Toronto. And, if you take a look at the Knicks history, right, the Knicks are filled with those types of tough players. In addition to Oakley, they had Anthony Mason. Of course, earlier they had Willis Reed. And if you go even further back, my childhood elementary school friend, Harry Gallatin. I didn't know Harry Gallatin. But when you go that far back, you had Gallatin, who at the time, I think he was 6'6" and 220 or so, which was huge at the time. So the Knicks always had a history of getting these big bruisers to help them play the game the way that it used to be played. So I don't look at Kurt Thomas in terms of points and rebounds and all those statistics. I look at what he did on the court for the team, as well as the leadership he provided off the court.
I think the leadership part is especially key given the time period that we're talking about. So you talk about toughness. So he came in at an interesting time because he came in, his first season was the 99 season, which was obviously, I think, more famously remembered as Latrell Sprewell's first season with the Knicks. And it was that season that was a crappy season up until the last week of the regular season, and then magic ensued for the next 6 to 8 weeks. And then he was a part of the 2000 run to the Eastern Conference Finals. But that's not relevant for this list because we start this during the 2000-2001 season. The reason I think I'm happy you brought up leadership is because that's when Ewing left. And I think at that point, there was a bit of a leadership void. And look, there were some lean years there between when Ewing left and when they briefly made it back to the playoffs in the 2003-2004 season. But like the bottom never, to me at least, and I'm curious if your recollection is different, the bottom never fully fell out. Those teams were kind of boring. Scott Layden, gave way to Isaiah Thomas because Isaiah, I think, promised a little more sizzle to his steak. But I think having Kurt Thomas there, and then I don't know, is it a coincidence that once Thomas left is when things went from like boring and not particularly good to you were downright embarrassed to be a Knicks fan. So, yeah, I think the leadership part of it is big. The toughness part of it is big. And, and then there's his stint, towards the end of his career with that 2012-13 team.
Yeah, I mean, if you consider bad to be Fizdale-esque, then no, the bottom did not fall out.
Yeah,
but what are they going 5 years in a row without, or 7 years in a row? I forget off the top of my head, without a winning record.
Yeah, it was a little bit too long. I know that.
Yeah, and they tried to replicate their version of the bad boy era with a bunch of players that just couldn't fit. Because you remember at that time, it wasn't unusual for teams to still have these Karl Malone types
at power
manning
forward,
the blocks at power forward, right? Because they had an actual power forward. And the Knicks were bringing in people like Othella Harrington and LeVar Postle. They actually thought Postle could be a power forward, undersized power forward.
So Harrington is the one guy, and then Clarence Weatherspoon, when you give that description, is the other guy I kind of think of.
That's right. And neither one of them could do that. So what Kurt Thomas did at the time was he thought it was his job, and he was right about that. He thought it was his job to give leadership and stability to a team that really didn't have any. And, he did everything on the court every night that someone in his position, the Oakley-esque player, would do, right? Got on the blocks, he threw elbows, he got rebounds, he cleared out, he set picks, was a hard-nosed player, and he tried to impress upon the rest of the team that, we may not be that talented, but man, if we can play this way, we can at least make make some headway. And I actually think if Kurt Thomas were not on those teams, what were they, 37, 38, 39 win teams, mediocre teams, they'd have been a lot worse.
I'm sure they would have. I'm happy you brought up the power forward part of it all, because interestingly enough, in the 99 playoffs, which I know is not relevant to this conversation because, again, we're not counting anything before the start of the 2000-2001 season. He started he started the vast majority of the games during the 99 season, and then he started the first 9, 10, 11, 12 playoff games, the last of which was a win against the Indiana Pacers. In which that was game 3, the 4-point play, one of the most famous games in Knicks history. He started that game, but I think maybe sensing the direction that the things were going, Jeff Van Gundy at that point made a change and brought Latrell Sprewell, who up until that point had been coming off the bench, into the starting lineup. And the Knicks went from a bruising front line of, originally it was Ewing and Kurt Thomas, and then once Ewing went down with the injury, it was Chris Dudley and Kurt Thomas, to a lineup, and Larry Johnson, who was playing the 3, to a lineup that more closely resembled something you might see in the NBA today, with Charlie Ward, Sprewell, Houston, Larry Johnson, and then Dudley, and eventually Camby, he turned to as a starting 5 in the finals. The thing I want to ask you, and then we can close it out with this, some players from this era, I don't know how well they would fit in the modern NBA. And, we covered this a little bit on the first part of the pod, but just as a general outline, I think Kurt Thomas would work really well as a small ball 5, and even in some complexions, depending on what kind of 5 you have, even as a 4. But I think as a small ball 5 man, I think he could fit on a lot of teams and play a lot of minutes in the NBA these days.
Yeah, assuming that you just want him for defense and rebounding, and you want him to do the grunt work that is still important in today's game. Yes, he wasn't much of an outside shooter. And because of his
mid-range,
size,
though, he could shoot from the mid-range, though.
He could go 11, 12, maybe on a good day, 15 feet.
Fair.
Maybe. But, you're not going to, give him – he would not be a player in today's game that would provide you a lot of space. What he would provide you, though, was that grit.
Yes.
Right? He would – how many times over this past season did we, either you and I talking privately or on any one of the number of halftime Zooms, go, boy, the Knicks needed some toughness, right?
A few.
A few. Yeah. Kurt Thomas would have added that toughness. He would not have allowed people to get into the lane unimpeded. He would have used his elbows with the skill of a painter that uses his brush. He would have done everything that he possibly could in order to help that team win in a physical way. Lots of players help their team win in a different way. He's in a physical way. And the Knicks didn't have a lot of that physicality last season. And, lots of teams could use that. The only question I've got is not whether he could succeed in today's game from a physicality and from a defensive perspective, but would the referees let him play that game?
Well, I think Kurt Thomas's style of play and his kind of brand of basketball has largely been litigated out of the game. And, the guys that still border on that, your Dylan Brookses and your Draymond Greens of the world, coincidentally or otherwise, they are known as much for their antics as they are for their physicality. Kurt Thomas brought none of that. I mean, you looked at those eyes and you're like, oh my God, this man's crazy. He's going to kill me. But he didn't actually, border on anything untoward, shall we say. And he was the consummate professional. And I guess the best compliment that I could pay him is that, again, unlike some players that came after him, always made you proud to be a Knicks fan, and it's a shame that he didn't get a chance to shine a little bit more on some better teams. Again, he had the 12-13 year and those two runs in 99 and 2000, but I don't know, Ray. I think of him as a great Knick, and it sounds like you do too. So I hope fans, maybe some of our younger fans who don't know a whole lot about Kurt Thomas, maybe this will spur them to go watch some clips of him in the 99-2000 playoffs. You're gonna like what you see. I guarantee you.
Most importantly, and again, a little bit of outside of what we're talking about, but go watch Christmas Day 1999, in which he lit up Jalen Rose and Reggie Miller. If you're having a bad day, just go watch that. It'll make you happy.
Yeah. So shout out to Kurt Thomas. And shout out to you, Ray Marcano. Thank you for joining me for a few minutes. Anything you want to plug or promote while I have you on?
If you're not reading the Bourbon Resource, please do. The Bourbon Resource at Substack. Pretty good bourbon newsletter. At least John tells me it is. So thank you, John.
It's a lot better, pretty good. And yes, for anybody who is interested in bourbon or just likes reading good writing, check that out. It is absolutely free. It comes your way once a month. Even if you're someone who's like, knows someone who's into bourbon and wants to get them a gift or something, it's the best you'll find. And then, of course, check out Ray's writing on the Knicks Film School newsletter on Substack as well, where he has, I think, about another half dozen or so pieces coming your way for the rest of the summer. Really some exceptional Nick You Knew write-ups over the last several weeks, including many Knicks that I did not know much about, and I was happy to learn about. So, Ray, you're a gift. Thank you for lending your voice and your thoughts. You are not old, sir, just in case anybody was wondering. And we'll do this again soon. All right?
All right. Thanks, brother.